doing another class which is looking at some of the themes in this book. And so if you want to find some exercises for some of the themes that we're looking at today, please buy this book. It's available on Amazon for £16. It's called Grammar in Theory and in Practice, and you can find it quite quickly. If you want to buy a PDF copy, either write me an email, you can see my email address up here, or write a message under the video and I will get in touch. And the PDF copy is £12, so it's a little bit cheaper. Now we're looking at determiners today because this is the very first chapter in this book, determiners. And I started with determiners partly because I'd rather people knew what determiners were before we study nouns, and that's because they're always found together. You don't find a determiner without a noun after it, and that's because determiners identify and quantify the noun. That's the very definition of a determiner. Okay, so you always find a determiner with a noun, and that's why I wanted to do determiners first before I did nouns. But there's a second reason as well, and it's because native speakers most of the time have never heard of determiners. Just like native speakers haven't heard of a lot of different grammatical things, determiners, I mean, they'll have heard of adjectives, they will have heard of tenses, and maybe even active and passive, but I guarantee they won't have heard of determiners. And so I wanted to start with determiners because there are two really simple mistakes that almost all native speakers make with determiners. And so I wanted to point these mistakes out and give English people a way of avoiding these mistakes. And remember that I wrote this book really for young people because I think that in the future people will return to grammar. I think that we will continue teaching grammar in the future. I actually think it's a core subject, in my opinion, just like mathematics. So I wanted to write something really aimed at my daughter's age so that I could introduce her to some of these themes early on. I just think that it's going to help her in the future with languages and also with English, with her own language. So in this first chapter, I talk about determiners, and I try to show you how you can recognize determiners. There's an exercise where you have to do that, taking a text, taking a classic text, a GCSE text, I think it's Lord of the Flies. You have to find all the determiners in this text. So how can you do that? Well, firstly, understand that they always identify and quantify the noun. Yeah, that's very important. That's perhaps the most important definition for a determiner, or the clearest definition. And another thing that I want you to know is that they are often called irremovable adjectives. Now, I want to show you that there are even some grey areas between determiner and adjective, because really a determiner is a subset. It is an adjective, but it's an irremovable adjective. So let's have a look at how we can understand if we've got a determiner or if we've got something else like an adjective, and they're the hardest to separate. So have a look at this. The word little can be used as a determiner, or it can be used as an adjective. So seeing as determiners are irremovable adjectives and they're very difficult to distinguish from adjectives, let's look at this first. So little, when it's a determiner, it's a quantifier that means not much. And little as an adjective is a describing word that means small. Now let's look at the difference. Compare, I have little money. Yeah, you could even say I have very little money. And I think that that's more common for some reason among native speakers. But notice that here, we are not saying that the money is of a small size. And so whenever it's an adjective, it just means small size. Whenever it's a determiner, it means not much. In other words, it means a small quantity, not size. Okay, so there is a difference in meaning. And when we say I have little money, this little is a determiner because it's describing the quantity of money. But when you say I have a little coin, this little is talking about the size of the coin, and so this little is an adjective. Okay, so the two littles are very, very different. And to see the difference, I mean, I must admit they do come very close, but they are different. So This is why we separate determiners from adjectives, because we have certain words in English that could function in either way and they change meaning. Notice that this does mean not much. I have not much money, yeah? I don't have much money, but I have a small coin. We couldn't say I have a not much coin, and we couldn't say I have small money, yeah? It just wouldn't make any sense. So notice that they are very different. So very often a good way to start with parts of speech is to learn some of the most common determiners. And I've written a little list here. However, just to learn these and think, right, I've got determiners sorted, I've learned the list, it isn't really enough, because many of these determiners function in other ways. We saw in the last class that the word that can function in 5 different ways. Well, these determiners, unfortunately, they also function in other ways, not only as determiners, especially the quantifiers. Yeah, they quite often function as pronouns or adverbs, and we'll look at that in a second. So what about this most common mistake? The most common mistake that native speakers make with determiners is with few, fewer and less, few and little, but really it's fewer and less mainly, and also these two. And these two, I mean, I hear so many people now, and it drives me crazy, I hear so many people saying the amount of people, and it's wrong. It should be the number of people. And you hear the amount of times. It's wrong. The number of times. This particular mistake, I guarantee you hear it everywhere nowadays. It's more or less, I imagine that some people consider it correct. In fact, if you say it to lots of people, they will say, what's wrong with that? That's fine, the amount of people, why not? But I promise you, and you can look it up in Cambridge Dictionary or in other places, the number of is for countable nouns, okay? Some nouns we can count, 1 banana, 2 bananas, 3 bananas. Some nouns we can't count. 1 money, 2 monies, 3 monies. It doesn't work. You can't count money unless you're counting the physical stuff there. I just mean that you can't say 1 money, 2 monies, 3 monies. It's wrong. You can't say 1 information, 2 informations. It's wrong. So information, money, work. Yeah, you can't say 1 work, 2 works, 3 works. These words are uncountable nouns, which means we say how much work, how much time, how much money, and we say I have little money, I have little time, I have little work, and we say I have less work than you, I have less time than you, I have less money than you. But with countable nouns like bananas, yeah, we say how many bananas do you have? I have very few bananas, I have fewer bananas than you, not less bananas. I make this mistake all the time. I hold my hands up to it. And if you hear me making it, feel free to correct me under the video. And so that's why I started with this chapter, partly because this is quite an easy theme. And I think anybody out there who's got no previous experience with grammar will understand what I'm talking about. And so I just wanted to clear up a few mistakes in that first chapter that are actually not that difficult to understand, but that very few people learn at school. I don't know anyone who learned this at school, and actually it's so simple. You can teach kids this particular rule in less than a minute. So really, we've got no excuse for not telling kids about this. I know loads of adults make mistakes with this, and if you watch YouTube videos, you hear speakers making these mistakes all the time. And I'm sorry that you will even hear it in my videos as well. So why not start off with something like this, a nice, clear, easy mistake, but one which is everywhere, one which you hear all the time. And make sure you get it out of your own work, then get it out of your own speaking and get it out of your own writing. Okay, so that's the main reason why I started with determiners, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper than perhaps the book goes into. The book is there for people, well, especially chapter 1. I understand that some people will be approaching these themes from, well, there'll be a blank page. They won't be approaching them with a lot of terminology or with a lot of experience. But I want to delve a little deeper. And I want to show you that there are some grey areas. But before we look at those grey areas, we've looked at little. The best way to understand what a determiner is to understand what a determiner is not. And I would say this about all the parts of speech, and actually about any topic when you're learning a new theme, it could be something scientific, but quite often you have to learn the vocabulary, and to learn the vocabulary, very often you have to learn what something isn't before you learn what something is. And so we've looked and seen that determiners, they're adjectives, but they're irremovable adjectives, and so they are slightly different to ordinary adjectives, and they very often carry different meaning. But let's have a look at some other words. Let's have a look at the determiner all. Now, all is a determiner when it's followed by a noun, yeah, and when it quantifies that noun. Makes sense with our earlier definitions, yeah? So if you say all men, all is a determiner. Or if you say all the pencils, then we've got two determiners, all, the, and then the noun, pencils. And that's something to remember. You can get chains of determiners. Quite often you do. Quite often you see two determiners together, and sometimes you'll see three determiners together. So that's something to be aware of. You might see the 5 boys, and 5 is a determiner because it quantifies, it's a number, and so you do get chains of determiners. Usually you only see one, but you can see two, and so quite often, in fact, you can see two together. So have a look at this word all, and we could say we gave up all hope. All must be a determiner because it's quantifying the noun hope. Yeah? Look at the next one. I know all the ugly details. Now here, all is a determiner, but you'll often hear it called a predeterminer because it's coming before another determiner. That's all that means. And so here we've got two determiners, really, quantifying and identifying the noun details. Ugly is an adjective, and notice that we can remove ugly very easily. I know all the details. Yeah, I know all the ugly details. But we can't really remove the. We can't say, I know all details, although well, it changes the meaning. And this is what we really mean when we say irremovable adjectives. Sometimes they are removable, but it drastically changes the meaning. Have a look at this one. I have money. I'm sure you all agree that that's grammatically correct. I have money. But little is irremovable in the sense that I have money is very different from I have little money. So when we say irremovable, we mean that it drastically changes the meaning when you remove it. Now look at the next two uses of all, because I think this will help you understand when all is used as a determiner and when all is used as something else. So all of us are invited. Now this is different. You may see it called a determiner in this position, but technically it's not. Technically, whenever you see the word of, you're going to have a noun before the word of and a noun after the word of. It's always the case, yeah? If you think about the King of France, the capital of Spain, yeah, the rate of interest, the speed of delivery, you always get noun of noun, because of the way the word of functions, it's a preposition. So this is always going to be a noun before of, and it's always going to be a noun after of, but you very often have a determiner there first. So you might see something like the king of the Western tribes, something like that. So the king of the Western adjective tribes. So you'll always have that noun of noun. And that's how we know that all here is a pronoun standing in for us. Yeah, all of us. We've got pronoun here and we've got pronoun here. So when you see all before the word of, it's a pronoun, and it's because you've always got a noun before the word of. So it's not really a quantifier there. Although I do agree, and in TEFL very often they'll teach these kind of pronoun, a lot of, plenty of. Quite often they'll teach these quantifying expressions as just kind of multiple word quantifiers or multiple word determiners. So just like you can get compound nouns and you can get compound verbs, you might want to treat a lot of, or all of, or both of, or either of, you might want to treat them as compound determiners. I've never seen them treated like that, but that would certainly make sense to me, and I'd see that as a sensible and logical approach. However, if you want to break it up, it is possible to break up all of them, some of them, many of them, and you just do it as pronoun, preposition of, and then noun, yeah, or pronoun. Okay, so we've got all of us. In this one, it's a pronoun. And then we've got we all know this is untrue. Now, this is still a pronoun. All refers to the we. But I just wanted to put this one in as a different way we can see all being used as a pronoun. And the reason why I say it's different is because it comes after the subject that it renames. Yeah, we all. It's renaming we. It's kind of a type of a positive for that reason. But a defining a positive, which we all, yeah? So that's quite it's something you very often see, but it's still a pronoun. And here, the students all. Again, it's coming after the subject that it's renaming, the students all. It's quantifying the, it's telling you, it's renaming those students, all of the students. So here it's a pronoun as well, yeah, because it's renaming students, basically. It's standing in for students. It represents all of the students. And then lastly, all being used as an adverb, because it can be used as an adverb. Something like this, I felt all alone. So notice when it's an adverb, it's got to describe an adjective or an adverb, because that's what adverbs do. It's one of their functions. So if you see all tired, all upset, all angry, it's an adverb. It's describing an adjective. But if you see it renaming a group of people like all of us, or we all know, or the students all passed the exam, then it's a pronoun. And if you see it before a noun, telling you how many of the noun, in other words, all of the noun, then it's a determiner. Okay, so it's worth looking at these nuances to understand exactly what a determiner is. But I do want to admit now that there are grey areas. And for me, in particular, next and last and same and own are debatable. Now, I want to make it clear that the kind of stuff we're studying, people argue about this kind of stuff. People say same is a determiner and another person will say no, it's an adjective, yeah? And they give their reasons. And so there are always grey areas, and you ought to have some arguments for believing that something is a determiner or something is an adjective. You ought to think why you argue such is the case, because there are arguments you can make. So look at next and last. Next week we'll come and visit. Now this is very clearly a determiner and not an adjective. But I want to show you a couple of cases where it really looks like an adjective. Here it doesn't look like an adjective. It looks like a determiner. Why? Well, what tests can we have for determiners? Perhaps the most obvious test is, can you remove it and it still makes grammatical sense? Yeah? Because many times you can't. I bought a new car. Okay, I bought a car. New is an ordinary adjective. You can remove it, but I bought car. You can't remove a. A is an irremovable adjective, so it's a determiner. But sometimes it's not so clear. Here, next week we'll come and visit, or we'll come and visit next week. You can't say week will come and visit. That would be completely wrong. Or we'll come and visit week. And so this one is an irremovable adjective. It's a determiner without question. Yeah, I think everybody would agree that this next is a determiner. But have a look at the next example. The next example. I sold it the next day. Can we remove next from this one? No, not really. I sold it the day. So this one looks like it's definitely a determiner. We can't remove it. It doesn't make any grammatical sense. However, in some online dictionaries, and the one I recommend, Macmillan, they call this an adjective and this one a determiner. I disagree with them here. I think that this is a determiner, this is a determiner as well. It can't be removed. Yeah, you just can't pull it out. But have a look at the next example. He will see the next patient. Now, can't we say he will see the patient? Yeah. And so here, I think you have a very good argument for saying this is just an ordinary adjective. Yeah, that you could argue that, because you could say, hang on, it's removable. And so in that sense, it's no different to he will see the old patient, he will see the young patient, like an ordinary adjective, right? So there are times where you may be thinking this is far more similar to an ordinary adjective than to a quantifier, a determiner. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that because you can see that first and second sometimes look like ordinary adjectives rather than determiners. If you say, I would like the first cake, I would like the cake, it seems okay. So do be aware of this, that many of the determiners in our list do seem to be removable from some sentences. However, you might argue secondly that when you remove the determiner, it alters the identity or the quantity of the noun. We had the example, I have little money. Remove little, I have money. It does seem to drastically change the meaning because it changes the quantity. And so I would say that if you when you remove the determiner, you alter the identity or the quantity. Okay, you have an argument then that you've got a determiner. And that's why even with this one here, with he will see the next patient, or here is the next example, here is the example, yeah, it seems to be removable. You might argue that you are changing the identity here, because he will see the patient is one person, but he will see the next patient specifies exactly which one. And in that sense, you might argue that next, just like first, just like second, it specifies, it identifies which one, so it must be a determiner. But I still thought that was worth mentioning because there are some words like next, last, same, own, and even first and second, where you could argue that they become much more like ordinary adjectives. So I wanted to mention that. Oh, and here you can see next as well functioning differently. Next can be a pronoun. You will be the next, meaning the next one. So the next there is standing in for a noun, so it's a pronoun. Or I'll see you the week after next. Yeah, here after next, after is a preposition, next must be a noun, next it's standing in for the week after the next week, so it's a pronoun when you say the week after next. And it's an adverb when it modifies a verb, like what will happen next, yeah? Something like that, who will win next, yeah, then it's modifying the verb, so it's an adverb. So be aware that these determiners, very often they function in other ways. And another difficult one is the word either, which you'd probably be able to see down there. There we go. The word either is tricky because it's a correlative conjunction, first of all, when you see it being used in tandem with the word or. If you've got either clause or clause, it's correlative conjunction, but it might be either noun or noun, yeah? I haven't seen either my mum or my dad, yeah? And then it's either either noun or noun phrase, yeah? My is a determiner and mum and dad are nouns. So when you see it with an or, it's a correlative conjunction, and stick it down as a correlative conjunction. Don't call it something else because it's just best to keep that's one function of either. And it's when it's joined with or, yeah, because remember these correlative conjunctions are two-part conjunctions. So that's a correlative conjunction, but when you see either and then immediately noun, that's when you've got a determiner. Just like when you see all hope, when you see either twin, when you see either anything, either and then a noun. So do you think either twin will come? Either is a determiner there. It's identifying which twin, yeah, either twin, either one of them. Okay, so that's another way either can be used. But of course, either can be a pronoun when you say either of them, just like all of them, all of us. Either is then a pronoun when it's before the of. And lastly, if you put either on the end of a sentence, a negative sentence, it only works with negative sentences, to mean additionally, then it's an adverb, just like additionally. So you say something like this, you don't like him and I don't like him either. And then either means additionally, as well, also. And when it means as well, additionally, also, just like those three words, it's an adverb. Yeah, it's an adverb. It's describing the whole clause and it's saying in addition, basically, additionally. So that's another way either can be used. So be aware of the many functions of different words, because it will help you with these parts of speech. And the more that you do them, the more that you see parts of speech very quickly, the more readily you identify these parts of speech, and the easier it is to punctuate them in your written work. And certainly the easier it is to create sentences in your speaking. So please, if you have any questions about any of these bits and pieces, put them under the video. Please, if you want to do some more work with determiners, buy my book. It's available on Amazon for £16, but it's available from me via PDF for £12. Just put your name under the video, or just say, Dave, I'm interested in buying a PDF, or send me an email to that email address, and I'll make sure you get a copy of this book. Now, perhaps today, perhaps tomorrow, I will be continuing this book. I haven't done any phrasal verb videos for a long time, but I do like phrasal verbs. I think they are a really challenging part of our vocabulary for foreign learners. So I'll be doing a lot of lessons aimed at this book. Please buy a copy if you want to improve your phrasal verbs. I've already got about 90 lessons on phrasal verbs. I've got a lot already up, a lot of material for you to go through, but I'm going to start making some more. So please get a copy of this book. If you want an electronic copy, put your name under the video, or send me an email. But if you want a physical copy, you can buy it on Amazon for £20. Okay, thanks everybody for watching. Please like, subscribe and all the rest of it, and I'll see you soon.